data and claims submitted by institutions. Here you must realize the importance of institutions submitting correct data to us, data on time as well. Now, you will have noticed in the past few weeks what has been going around on social media about huge chunks of money deposited into student accounts. I saw a figure of 2 million rands and above that was cited as one of the main evidences of the inefficiency of the system. We want you to know today that we investigated that quite promptly and found that that was fake. The fact that you have got such amounts spread around in the social media, you've got the system discredited to that extent, is very instructive, and I think it's something that we should all take seriously. The system has got its own advantages, among which are the following. The system is secured by a banking environment, security, laws and regulations. So on the legal side, the system is covered. The system offers student banking freedom through a physical card and a virtual card that enables students to perform, amongst others, the following functions: withdraw cash at any ATM and point of sale, transact without limitations to certain retailers, perform EFT and online transactions. Apologies. NSFAS will directly be responsible for an on-time payment of allowances. The system will provide students centric value-added services. The system will provide various financial literacy programs to empower students on managing their finances. The system is secure and provides students with peace of mind in knowing that they can hold NSFAS to account, and NSFAS only for their non-payment or late payment of allowances. It works like a normal bank account and has all the security features of a bank card offered by the big banks, and students need not transfer to a different account. It gives students financial freedom to accurately plan and budget for their allowances. Students need to have the physical card to transact, and they can utilize a virtual card, and there's multiple ways to transact with the account. NSFAS is in the final stages of negotiating value-added services that will see NSFAS beneficiaries enjoy special benefits from specific stores, such as discounts and purchases. Just to share with you how it works. Once a student has been approved for NSFAS funding, a bank account is created with the details of the student which they will need to authenticate before they can access their funds. Just like any other banking solution, no one can access funds without properly verifying their identity in line with FICA. Where we have paid, students will be able to see the bank balance. However, they cannot access their money if they did not register and authenticate themselves. Talking about authentication, you will all remember cases in the past where allowances went to targets other than students. You'll remember the many fraudulent cases that we have had. And this system ensures that there is authentication. The authentication process requires that the student produces a proof of their identity. After confirming their identity, students can then create a PIN for their account and access their account and funds as with normal bank accounts. NSFAS will only pay allowance to students whose registration information has been received from institutions. So if no registration information is at our disposal, we cannot pay students. At this point, I want to take you back to some observations by members of the public, by Parliament, by the press, just 2 months ago, that about 5.2 billion rands was erroneously paid to students who were not deserving. Against that background, it's only fair for NSFAS to ensure that our authentication process is firm, is effective, and we do not find ourselves funding ghost students. Those that have followed developments in NSFAS will know that some of the investigations happening towards institutions by various law enforcement agencies will point to the possibility of ghost recipients of our funding. Now, I have indicated earlier on that it can never be true that in the past the allowance system never had problems. There were various problems, some of which I've indicated. One of the most pressing problems that we used to have in the past will be that students will be paid late, even though funds were deposited into the account of the responsible institutions. All that notwithstanding, we have never seen the kind of reaction, the level of protest that we're receiving at this point in time. And I guess that too is instructive. Even more disturbing is the level which some go to discredit the system, which level includes cyber attacks. Now, party to the ongoing actions to discredit the system has been confirmed cases of targeted cyber attacks on the websites of the fintech companies where our beneficiaries' accounts are hosted. There's no doubt that this is with the intention to steal student data and intercept allowances and render the new system unsafe. NSFAS is investigating such cases and the law enforcement agencies. As a matter of fact, we have alerted the law enforcement agencies of such activities. Now, coming to a status update, a total of 355,270 paid students, which constitute 86% of the paid students, have been able to successfully authenticate themselves and receive their allowance. Call upon the remaining percentage of 14% to please authenticate themselves so that their allowances can be released. If we're not firm on authenticating these students, we run a risk of paying ghost students. The systems we have put in place, providing your ID, your face, will ensure that students are properly authenticated. And please let them proceed and do so and save us the trouble of funding ghost students. NSFAS is reviewing and assessing the remaining students that were paid but unable to access their funds because they had not fully authenticated themselves. We do note that some students have been unable to authenticate themselves due to connectivity issues, and NSFAS has sent teams to campuses to assist students with the authentication and verification process. We have also noted that closer to the payment dates, the system experienced technical glitches caused by high internal traffic due to students registering at the same time. Onboarding for TVET college students continue on an ongoing basis as new students enroll. A total of 608 601 was paid to NSFAS beneficiaries at public universities, whilst a total of 383 671,000 was paid to technical and vocational and training colleges for the month of August alone. As with any introduction of a new system, there's now been some teething issues and genuine cases of students who have not been able to access their allowance with the new solution. Now, in such cases, which case will affect the 14% of the students who are not onboarded, we stand committed to assist in various ways, including going to the institutions themselves and physically assist the students on how best to onboard. Some of these problems can mainly be attributed to issues of data integration with institutions and system glitches caused by too many students seeking to register onto the system at the same time. We've also had reports of students struggling with the authentication process and require assistance. And once again, in these cases, we deploy officials across various campuses. One of the biggest contributors, which is not only specific to the direct payment, has been institutions' non-compliance in submitting registration data. Registration data is either submitted late or incorrectly, and this disarms the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, as we can't pay students whose registration has not been confirmed. NSFAS policy requires institutions to send updated registration monthly. Therefore, any wrong payment, such as those paid to students who have dropped out or not attending classes, will be as a result of us not having the information that we need from our respective institutions. Now, coming to funding process, relationship with third parties, and the defunding of students, to ensure the correct processing of these applications, NSFAS has partnered with other entities that help us further authenticate the data that we receive from applicants. Now, these institutions will be the State Security Agency, it will be the South African Revenue Services, and the Department of Home Affairs. This is as a response to fraudulent applications that NSFAS received for a long time during its existence. These partnerships have proven to be fruitful in helping NSFAS make informed decisions. We have had instances where information received through third parties is either outdated or inaccurate, and we have been in constant engagement with the third parties in a bid to have real-time data. Now, the contentious issue of the defunding of students. After thorough investigation, improved relationships with third-party data sources such as SARS, and engagements with the Auditor General South Africa, NSFAS sought to re-evaluate some applications whose funding have been approved. After this exercise, investigations results indicated that some applicants were not deserving of the funding and had submitted falsified or fraudulent documents, and these had to be instantly defunded as continuation of knowingly funding individuals who do not meet funding requirements will be going against the provisions of the funding policy whilst depriving deserving students. I must pause at this point and just take us back to that finding by ourselves, subsequently by the SIU, which was reported, of the 5.2 billion rands that was incorrectly dispensed to undeserving students. Now, this has got huge implications, and I've got no doubt that the Auditor General wouldn't be kind to an institution that perennially fund undeserving students. Now, we have received criticisms about how insensitive we have been on dealing with defunding of students who are not deserving. Now, our posture is that as soon as we have got information that provides evidence that applicants have falsified their information, that all that we're paying to them is fraudulent, we must take swift and firm action immediately. If we don't do that, we've got a governance problem. The blame will be on the board, the blame will be on management, and I think it's very important for all of us to understand that we have got to approach this issue with the firmness that it deserves. Now, the question is, will there be faults? Are there instances where in the defunding of students there will have been faults on the side of the institution? We have accommodated that possibility, and management has deliberated upon this extensively, had engagements with student leaders on how best to deal with this, and the route that is being followed by the institution is that those students funded will be communicated to. And if there's any discrepancy to the students on the information that we have, the onus rests on the student to do that, and that shall be duly attended to with the care that it deserves. Now, a total of 45,927 were affected by this action. For example, students will provide correct parental relationships in their first application attempt. And when they get rejected due to the financial status of those parents, and they reapply, they submit different parental relationships. When we did re-evaluation, our system picks up the original information previously submitted. And after re-evaluation, funding was reinstated for more than 14,000 students. 31,000 and above remained unsuccessful, with most first-time entering students having a household income of more than 350,000 rands, and returning students either not meeting their required academic progressions, which is 50% of all registered modules, and not exceeding the well-known N+ rule. Those who were unsuccessful were given a chance to appeal and submit supporting documents. I must mention at this point that there was no time in the history of the institution that appeals were given as much prominence as they are given now. We've got an independent appeal tribunal headed by an advocate, constituted representative of members of our various sectors, the universities, the TVET institutions, and student leaders. We're giving so much attention and prominence to appeals to ensure that no student get left out of our funding products and processes unfairly. Now, on appeals, the NSFAS appeals option allows individuals whose financial standing could have changed between the time of processing of the application and finalization of the funding decision. It could be that a key contributor to their household income may become incapacitated, or deceased since the submission of the application, or the parents of the applicant are divorced. And in terms of the divorce decree, a court has determined that the responsibility for child maintenance, including the responsibility of the cost of education, is restricted to one parent. In February 2023, NSFAS also established an independent appeals tribunal consisting of individuals in the higher education and training sector, officials from universities, colleges, and student leaders, as I indicated earlier on. To date, more than 53,000 appeals have been approved for the 2023 academic year. A good job for the appeals committee. A total of 6,000 appeals have been rejected for either financial ineligibility or academic ineligibility, and such students cannot submit any further appeal in this regard. About 27,000 are waiting supporting documents and messages requesting this has been sent to applicants and institutions. Other appeals are still in progress. All appeals decisions are subject to budget availability. Student accommodation. The NSFAS board and management conducted site visits to universities. TVET colleges across the country as well were visited to assess the state of student accommodation for NSFAS funded students. The following key challenges were identified: insufficient beds to accommodate students, the state of this accommodation not being conducive for student accommodation and learning, such as what we witnessed in the Free State, at the University of the Free State, Kwakwa branch, where students were staying next to a literal, not a metaphorical, a literal cattle crawl as their form of accommodation. And those students were not studying agriculture or animal husbandry. It was then necessary for NSFAS to streamlining student accommodation and optimize the process of providing housing for students in a manner that is efficient, cost-effective, and conducive to good learning environment, also a living environment. NSFAS then built an online student accommodation portal wherein all accommodation providers who wish to provide accommodation to NSFAS beneficiaries will register their properties, and this includes institutions. NSFAS also then appointed accreditors to accredit and grade the loaded properties. Once properties have been cleared and deemed fit for student living, the portal will be opened for students to apply for accommodation near them. A total of 41,245 beds have been registered, and 24,784 across the country have already been accredited, and NSFAS has commenced the process of piloting the new system with selected 18 TVET colleges. It is envisaged that after evaluating the pilot project and mitigating challenges encountered, the portal will be opened fully for both providers and students in all institutions. NSFAS requested institutions negatively affected by the newly introduced 45,000 a year accommodation to make their submissions and negotiations with private accommodation providers to adjust their rent fees to. There's a task team led by the department that is reviewing the cap. In addition, NSFAS has embarked on a new study with a financial institution that seeks to review the approach for next year's cap for accommodation. The findings on this study will be incorporated in the proposal if funding conditions and criteria that will be used to administer the scheme for the next academic year. NSFAS is constantly looking at ways to amend its funding policies to accommodate the dynamic conditions of the students' life cycle and banks the success of this policy implementation on collaborative efforts with sector stakeholders. We are always open to healthy engagements with other colleagues in the higher education sector, as well as student leadership, in ensuring that the journey of our beneficiaries in learning is comfortable and as livable as possible. We remain committed to enabling success and access in higher education in a responsible and sustainable way. Now, so many things have been happening in the past few days, as I indicated earlier on. We have seen statements coming from various stakeholders. I just caught sight of a statement from Yusuf putting the blame on the crisis, on the protests right at the doorsteps of NSFAS. Now, we have greatest of regrets to our leaders of higher institutions in the country, in particular the vice chancellors and their councils. I call the same respect to student leaders who mean well for their constituencies. We remain committed to work with all the stakeholders. We remain committed to have a collaborative relationship with the leaders of our universities and TVET colleges. We do not believe a resolution of the current challenges that we're facing lies in the blame game and pointing fingers. We all have a responsibility to be objective, to contribute in a manner that seeks to resolve the problems and in a manner that is constructive. It will be incorrect to make assumptions that universities are not part of the problem. Again and again, I indicated the need for universities to submit registration data for us in time. If we don't do that, the implications are very dire for NSFAS. We also take a very dim view of an impression given that universities are academic utopias. That's not the case. Universities are also not a one-size-fits-all. They face their challenges. There are universities that were doing very well with direct payments. There are others that were not. The Sifako Mahato University, for instance, was doing very well with direct payments. They will even go to an extent of taking the risk of funding students in cases where we were late with our payments. The same can be said about all institutions. Universities are not a one-size-fits-all. They've got various challenges as well, some of which are in the public domain. Some universities have become very unsafe owing to, amongst others, suspected business interests. We all know about that. We also know that some universities are being investigated for the abuse of NSFAS funds. We also know that there were cases that universities paid students. If anything, one of the reasons why direct payments are now an issue is because we're dealing with challenges that were faced at an institution level. Now, very instructive that all those challenges being there notwithstanding, we never saw protests to this extent. I want to emphasize that we would like to work very closely with USAF. They enjoy our best respect. And as a matter of fact, the CEO has met USAF several times. I think last year there are certain dates that he has given to us. I had the pleasure to meet the president and the deputy president of USAF less than 10 days ago, where we discussed some of the challenges, where we spoke about the need to engage better and how best we can do that. We are ready to meet USAF anytime. NSFAS can meet USAF tomorrow. There is no need for university leaders to communicate to us through statements. As a matter of fact, there is no need for university leaders to meet us anywhere else other than in a situation where it's us with them, eyeball to eyeball, discussing issues. We expect earnest inputs from university leaders and other academics on the challenges facing the black child in this country. If I were to raise just one issue that was raised again and again, the issue of the accommodation cap, which is capped at 4,500. We must not look at it marginally. It's bigger than that. The accommodation cap talks to a bigger problem. And one of those problems is the land question in South Africa. Why is it that poor people should pay 9,000 rands in Rondebosch, in Braamfontein, in Hatfield, in Stellenbosch? Where do you expect the son or daughter of a teacher to pay 9,000 rands a month for accommodation? And I'm referring to these categories because some of them don't qualify within the 350,000 bracket that constitute the criteria of allocating our funds to students. This is where we expect our academics, our leaders of universities, to come in and make constructive inputs on how to deal with this. We frown upon student leaders who have got no shame carrying placards and shouting they want the accommodation cap to go on. How do you explain carrying a placard and say you want to pay more? Who has ever seen that? How do you explain that? And what this stimulates in our thinking is, who is actually matching? Is it the property owner or is it the person carrying the placard? I want to appeal to all stakeholders in higher education to be constructive in the manner in which we do things, to engage. And when there are problems like this, let's sit down together and all be constructive and engage in a manner that is going to make it possible for the child from the disadvantaged community to have access. Protests, yes, we all support that. If there are any issues that students would like to raise, they can raise them in any form necessary, as long as it is constructive. And in all this, we hope to be working with all stakeholders who care about the future of the poor child. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you heartily and Dr. Kotha for the presentation that you have made. And I think it should be clear to all and sundry that a student has a very special place in the heart of NSFAS. And I think it should also be clear that NSFAS is an organization at work, and NSFAS is in good hands. In our midst, we've got our CEO, Mr. Andile Dongogo, a chartered accountant by profession. Nothing escapes his eye, and he spends sleepless nights if the well-being of a beneficiary at any institution is threatened by delayed payments, whatever the reason may be. So you may have heard from the chairperson that the commitment of NSFAS to making sure that access and success of a student in the academic environment is sustained and maintained, that commitment is unwavering. Without any waste of time, I would like to invite members of the media to put questions forward. And the way I propose to do it is that I'm going to go clockwise, taking 4 questions, and I would like to ask my colleague, the CIO there, to just keep track of the questions, because I know from experience that some can fall through the cracks. And then once 4 questions have been dealt with from an answering point of view, we will move on to the next. And I hope we'll be as efficient as possible in terms of the shortness of the questions, so that we can cover the broad issues that the chairperson of the board has dealt with. Can I proceed with opening the floor for questions? All right, I'm taking 4. I'll note the lady in red. Next. Right. Can we have the first question, please? Thank you very much. Can we take the next question, the second one? Thank you very much, a colleague from Sowetan. The third question? Thank you very much, colleague from ENCA. The next question. Thank you very much for the questions that we have taken. I said I'll take 4 questions clockwise, and then I'll just come back anti-clockwise with the next set of questions. All right, I think let me then proceed to take the next batch. I note only one hand. Please proceed, my sister. Thank you very much. I think in the absence of any further questions, I'd like my panel to, I'd like to invite the panel to respond. Thank you, Mr. Kosa.
Thank you so much. I will address 2 questions. The first is on the allegations against the CEO. And the second is how do you avoid the 5.2 billion? I'll talk high level to that. And I will ask the CEO to come talk to that. I'll also talk to the question on the Costato statement. First, the allegations against the CEO. If I were to preamble this as follows, the board stands for good governance. The board is very